And I found this quote from Che Guevara, which I'd never heard before, which really speaks into this present moment with Brett Kavanaugh. Che Guevara said, "Youth should learn to think and act as a mass. It is criminal to think as individuals. It is criminal to think as individuals." And I was thinking, what is it about the left? Why do they love mobs? Why do they love turning us into thoughtless, unthinking mobs? And mobs have certain, revolutionaries have loved this from, the French Revolution at least, but they're always depended on mobs to follow their charismatic leaders and their angry grievances and whatever it is they get, the way they bind you together to get what they want. The left has always done this. Tyrants have always done it. And of course, the reason is in part that when you are in a mob, your identity gets diffused into the mob. And this is what psychologists say, that you're no longer yourself. You are now this group. Your conscience gets diffused. You no longer blame yourself for the things that you're doing. It's everybody. Everybody was doing it. We were all lynching him. Everybody was doing it. So it wasn't you. And it kind of takes the moral weight of your actions off your shoulder. And that means you can be organized into a group of, us versus them. You can be in a kind of, the moral panic will sweep you along. And so wherever, and what is it the left is trying to overcome? Why do they need a mob to overrun things? Well, what they need is American traditions, American jurisprudence. They need a mob to overrun our sense that a man is innocent until proven guilty, that we shouldn't, that a person who is accused of something has a right to find evidence against him, not evidence that things happen, that these things occur. It doesn't matter if other people have been raped. That doesn't mean the man being accused is a rapist. So wherever there is an injustice, whether it's real or imagined, they want to organize us into a mob. So if a cop shoots a guy in Chicago and the guy is black and the cop is white, they want to organize us into black and white. It's the blacks. Oh my gosh, white cops are killing blacks. Now, again and again, studies, even by leftist organizations, have shown that cops are not killing black people. They're not killing black people out of order. It's not happening. They've shown it again and again. And yet, if you can convince people that that is going on, you can turn them into a mob. And that is the way that you overcome the brakes that American society has built on mob passions. I mean, this was the great fear of our founders. The mob was the great fear of our founders. They wanted the people to have power, but they knew the people could be easily organized into a mob, and so they were afraid of that. And that's why they have all these systems for breaking power, for putting some power over here and some power over there to oppose it, and for everybody to be fighting with each other so that nobody gets carried away into this one thing. And the left is trying to overcome that. So, Brett Kavanaugh, they've got the votes on the committee. Jeff Flake. I've had the feeling Jeff Flake is just not a very bright man. That is really what I feel. And I feel that the Donald Trump of it all kind of undercut his vision of the world, and he hasn't got another vision to put there, so he doesn't know what he thinks anymore. There are people telling the Daily Wire behind the scenes this guy has lost his mind, but he's clearly not a very brave person. So he says that he is going to vote for Brett Kavanaugh, and so they've got the votes that they need. Grassley has the votes they need to confirm. Then at the last minute, he gets on an elevator, and these two women attack him and start screaming at him. And he says, "Oh no." And he says, this is not why. He says, "Oh no, that didn't affect me." But they start screaming in his face. And we'll get back to the screaming, because those two women were not just ordinary women who walked in off the street. They meant to do this. They were paid operatives doing this. But Flake just collapsed, and he said, all right, well, the Democrats have been trying to do everything they can to delay the vote, just because they want to get to the midterms. They hope they can take back the Senate. They hope they can keep Trump from having any more Supreme Court picks or anything. If they get the Senate, they'll stop him from doing anything. So he caves in. He says, all right, we've got to have an FBI investigation. Now, this FBI investigation is nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. The most telling clue that this FBI investigation doesn't mean anything was an article, an op-ed written by your old friend James Comey in the New York Times, a former newspaper, former head of the FBI in a former newspaper, writing an op-ed that says the FBI can do this. And he starts out with this long, self-serving paragraph about how impartial he is. People kept calling him partial. People kept saying that he was for the Democrats and not for the Republicans. The rest of the op-ed is an attack on the Republicans. He says, we live in a world where the president routinely attacks the FBI because he fears its work. He calls for his enemies to be prosecuted and his friends freed. We live in a world where the president is an accused serial abuser of women who is caught on tape bragging about his ability to assault women. That, by the way, is not true. He was caught on tape saying that women would allow you to do things if you were a celebrity. That is not assault. That is women allowing. That's why I think that's why women got so angry at him. Most disturbingly, we live in a world where millions of Republicans and their representatives think everything I just said is okay. So he hates the Republicans. He says the FBI is up for this. It's not as hard as Republicans hope it will be. Republicans hope they can't find the truth. So he's already telling you what he thinks. He's already telling you what he thinks the FBI is going to find. This is a shameful, disgraceful thing for a former FBI. Trump was so right to fire this guy. He should have fired him and then kicked him, like don't let the door hit you on the way out. Should have kicked him in the backside as he was leaving. He says, listen to this. This is James Comey. This guy led the FBI. FBI agents know time has very little to do with memory. They know every married person remembers the weather on their wedding day, no matter how long ago. Significance drives memory. They also know that little lies point to bigger lies. All of that is untrue. All of that is untrue. People, they do this to guys in court all the time. Guy says, I saw a murder. I saw Mr. X murder Mr. Y. And they say, did you lie on your resume in 1982? The guy says, yeah, needed a job. See, well, if you lied then, you would lie now. So everything he says is wrong. It is not true. It is not true that time doesn't affect memory. Time does all kinds of crazy things with memory. 10 minutes can affect your memory and make you think you saw something that you didn't see. He really turned out to be an intellectual thug, this guy. He's a guy who just uses his pretense of honor and dignity to bully other people. Meanwhile, Rachel Mitchell, the prosecutor that the Republicans brought in to question Christine Blasey Ford, she gave a report to the Republicans. Now, they brought her in to get the truth. They didn't bring her in. She didn't say this in public. They brought her in to get at the truth. And she said of Christine Blasey Ford, he said, she said, remember, this is a woman trained in prosecuting these sexual cases. He said, she said case is incredibly difficult to prove, but this case is even weaker than that. Dr. Ford identified other witnesses to the event, and those witnesses either refuted her allegations or failed to corroborate them. For the reasons discussed below, I do not think that a reasonable prosecutor would bring this case based on the evidence before the committee, nor do I believe that this evidence is sufficient to satisfy the preponderance of the evidence standard, which means you don't even have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. You just have to bring in a lot of evidence. Doesn't matter. Jeff Flake caves. Listen to Jeff Flake and listen to what the women say as Jeff Flake gets into the elevator and these women accost him. Listen to what they say.
That's what you're telling all of these women. That's what you're telling me right now. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You're telling me that my assault doesn't matter, that what happened to me doesn't matter, and that you're going to let people who do these things into power. That's what you're telling me when you vote for him. Don't look away from me. Look at me and tell me that it doesn't matter what happened to me. That you'll let people like that go into the highest court of the land and tell everyone what they can do to their bodies.
So what does Brett Kavanaugh have to do with this woman? Why is Jeff Flake telling this woman anything about herself? She is saying, I was assaulted, and therefore, if you let somebody else who's been accused of assault, and apparently, according to this prosecutor, not very credibly, who's been accused of assault, you're saying something about me, and this is the left-wing line. Now, just so you know, that was Anna Maria Archila and Maggie Gallagher, the two women, and according to John Fund, who's an excellent reporter, reliable reporter, Archila is an executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy. She had spent the previous week in Washington engaged in protests against Kavanaugh. Gallagher is a 23-year-old activist with the group. The Center is a left-wing group that is heavily funded by, guess who? George Soros. So these are Soros operatives doing what Soros wants them to do. And I mean, I think that that's important to know. It's a tactic. And what's the tactic? The tactic is to make Brett Kavanaugh the symbol of all rapists, not an individual accused of a certain crime. So the whole point here is to make Brett Kavanaugh a symbol of all rapists instead of the person that he is. And she went on TV, this woman, Anna Maria, who confronted him. She went on TV, Anna Maria Archila, she went on TV, and this is what she said.
We have a culture that fundamentally doubts women in every respect. Our ability to lead, our ability to to exercise power, our ability to control our bodies. Brett Kavanaugh represents that. He represents a culture that fundamentally does not believe that women are equal. And that's why he's so dangerous. And he has expressed that in his actions as a young boy, actions that he's unwilling to take responsibility for. And he has expressed that in his politics. I think he's dangerous to the country, not just because he is accused with very credible allegations of having violated several women, but he is also dangerous because the work of justice is about recognizing when harm happens, taking responsibility for that harm, and beginning to repair it. If he's not able to do that in his own life, he should not be sitting in the highest court of the land.
So now Kavanaugh represents the entire culture. Now compare that to what Kellyanne Conway said to Jake Tapper as they're covering this because she said she was a victim of sexual assault. But listen to her conclusion.
I feel very empathetic, frankly, for victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment and rape. That I'm a victim of sexual assault. I don't expect Judge Kavanaugh or Jake Tapper or Jeff Flake or anybody to be held responsible for that. You have to be responsible for your own conduct. This is not Bill Cosby. Those comparisons on your network are a disgrace, and the anchor should have called them out. This is not even Bill Clinton. You have Senate Judiciary Committee members who refused to remove Bill Clinton from office after he received oral sex in the Oval Office and lied about it to a grand jury as president of the United States. The hypocrisy is ridiculous. And if not one Senate Judiciary Committee member changes his or her vote because of what they learned from the FBI investigation, that tells you all you need to know about what the president and Judge Kavanaugh has said is a sham. Let's just be honest what this is about. It's raw partisan politics. All women can't, I want those women who
So everyone covered the fact that she was sexually assaulted. She hadn't told that before. But the real story there was she said, I'm an individual and an individual attacked me. That individual is responsible. We are all responsible for our own actions. That was what Che Guevara doesn't want you to know. That's what the left doesn't want you to believe. What I really think we need here is I think we need a little history. We need a little history. So just to put this in context and make us understand who's talking to us. And I'll tell you why I'm so suspicious of the left, why I find it hard to take them seriously. One of the great moments in the hearings was Lindsey Graham going off on his fellow senators. This is Lindsey Graham being actual Spartacus. Spartacus would have been proud to be Lindsey Graham. Spartacus would have stood up and said, I'm Lindsey Graham. Here's Lindsey Graham.
This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process. You came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. Do you consider this a job interview?
The advice and consent role is like a job interview.
You consider that you've been through a job interview?
I've been through a process of advice and consent under the Constitution.
Would you say you've been through hell?
I've been through hell and then some.
Okay, so now, by the way, now what they say was, we accuse you of rape, and then you get angry. You look angry. You look angry. So now Lindsey Graham goes on George Stephanopoulos, and listen to this exchange.
It appears that the FBI will not be questioning those college witnesses who contradict Brett Kavanaugh's testimony about his drinking. Now, isn't that relevant given that there clearly was drinking going on, at least it's alleged at the party?
No, I think you're trying to portray him as a stumbling, bumbling drunk, gang rapist who during high school and college was Bill Cosby. 6 FBI background checks over the years would have uncovered this.
Okay, Now I want you to remember who George Stephanopoulos is, and I'm going to get to the point of this. Here is George Stephanopoulos from a documentary called The War Room. The War Room was built by Hillary Clinton to defend Bill Clinton from the accusations of women, credible accusations that he had assaulted, exposed himself to, and even raped. Here is George Stephanopoulos in 1992 bullying a reporter to kill a story about an affair that Bill Clinton was having during the elections.
I guarantee you that if you do this, you'll never work in Democratic politics again. Maybe you don't want to. I'm not saying it matters. You will be embarrassed before the National Press Corps. People will think, nobody will believe you, and people will think you're scummy. The alternative is you don't do it. It causes you some temporary pain with people who tomorrow aren't going to matter. And you have a campaign that understands that in a difficult time, you did something right. And, you know, that's important. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, or we can't do anything for you specifically or anything like that, but you know that you did the right thing and that you didn't dishonor yourself.
George Stephanopoulos working for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, who went on Matt Lauer's show to say that the women should be investigated. Matt Lauer, who is now accused of assaulting so many women, one of whom he turned over a chair and was in the middle of taking her when she fainted and needed medical attention. That's who's reporting on these stories. That's who's putting together. And that's just ABC and NBC. At CBS, we had Charlie Rose doing the same thing. Can we not be a little suspicious? Can we not be a little suspicious of the way this narrative is unfolding? We're being told from MRC that only 4% of their time is spent giving Kavanaugh's side of the story. Only 4%. And can't we be a little bit suspicious? These are the people who buried Teddy Kennedy, telling us what a wonderful, the heavens were weeping for Teddy Kennedy today, said Andrea Mitchell. If she had lived, Mary Jo Kopechne, who he left to drown, would have been given a lot of comfort in her old age from the laws passed by Teddy Kennedy. Can we not be a little suspicious of the narrative these people are selling us? These are the abusers. These are the abusers trying to tell us that we're the bad guys. It's utterly ridiculous. All right. You know, Ann Coulter has the thing I like about Ann Coulter is that she's such a blushing, reticent flower. You know, she never comes out and actually says what she means. She's so delicate. And no, I'm kidding. She will unleash on anybody. When I first heard about Ann Coulter, I remember thinking that in the old days, you know, if you went to the movies and you saw a smart talking, tough, beautiful blonde, right? You would think, oh, that's the hero of the movie. But when the left meets a smart-talking, tough, beautiful blonde in real life, what do? They run for the hills. They hate her. So she wrote a piece called No More Mr. White Guy, because this is another way in which the left is trying to organize us into gangs. They start attacking white people. She begins, I played this on the air last week, she begins by just reciting all the things that people have said. They know the optics of 11 white men questioning Dr. Ford will be so harmful, says a CNN legal analyst. They understand that you have all these white men who would be questioning this woman, says Gloria Borges, another CNN analyst. A congressman says women across this nation should be outraged at what these white men are doing. And she goes on, and she says, you know, and then Ann says, as the Supreme Court confirmation hearing resumes this week for Judge Brett Kavanaugh, it's clear that the Republicans are simply too white to get the job done. I suggest the Republicans sign up some outside help. The way baseball teams make late season acquisitions of pitchers and designated hitters for the playoffs, they can get some black men. And then she starts listing all the black men who've been accused and convicted of hurting women. Reverend Al Sharpton, Bill Cosby, Keith Ellison, whose story, by the way, he's accused of beating his wife and beating his girlfriend, and they're just like completely burying that story. But she says, what is the thinking behind snickering at white men judging an accusation of sexual assault? That Chuck Grassley is a rapist? You can be for rape or against it, she says. I happen to be against it. But the idea that alleged sexual assault survivors need the loving care of Black, Indian, and Hispanic men to judge their stories flies in the face of crime statistics from around the globe. In the history of the world, she says, there has never been a more pacific, less rapey creature than the white male of Western European descent. So she really comes at it. But the thing is, they set the rules. If the left sets the rules that they can be racist, they can attack white people, Ann is right. She can respond in kind. And they are certainly setting the rules of dividing us, certainly male and female.